this is my short introduction to bead embroidery for anyone who has never tried it. These are my beading needles. They come in very, very thin sizes, and they are so thin because you have to pick up a bead like this one, and it should easily fit over the needle in one go without any struggle, if possible. Those beading needles are special needles, and you can buy them at your local shop or in the internet, and they are similar to other needles, yes, at first sight, but if you compare them, this is a regular sewing needle, a little bit thicker, just for the comparison. You can see that here in focus. And those sewing needles are wonderful for threading just the thread, but they are not well for beading because, as you can see here, this is one of the usual beading needles, and you have no problem getting your bead over this one, whereas if you take the other one, you will get stuck at some point, and you should test this before you start your embroidery if your needle fits the bill. For the pattern that I'm using, I have used a graphite aquarelle pencil by Faber-Castell. It washes out when you wash the fabric. And the yarn here is simple polyester yarn. Nothing too fancy. I have used some scrap fabric just to get everything in place. Starting with a simple knot, I'm closing the end of my thread here. Already threaded my needle. You can do this by hand or with a little help. And I'm not starting from under the fabric, but I'm starting from the upper hand, because this is a method to get those knots very securely in place. Otherwise you risk pulling through the knot from under the fabric, and this is the waist knot method, and you just get it on the fabric from the upper side, get 2 stitches on there, hopefully on a line that will be stitched over in another row, and then you can pick up your beads with the needle like this and very easily slide the bead down the thread onto the fabric and pin it down on the surface of the fabric. Make that first stitch nice and tight so that nothing is too loose, and you can use a back stitch for this, coming up again from the underside of the fabric, pulling through the thread through the bead. Make it nice and secure so that nothing will lose its position. And then you can get this needle up a little bit away from the first bead. Take up another bead with your needle. Let it slide over the thread to the ground of the fabric, and use a simple back stitch, you can see that here, to secure it in place. Might need a little bit adjusting with a finger, but that's okay. You'll figure it out. And this is a method for a chain of individual pearls. You just take them one by one, and it gives a pattern effect, I'd say. And this is what it looks like in the end without too much measuring of the distances between the pearls. I like to secure my last pearl in the row, my last bead in the row, with several stitches so that the end of the thread will not get loose. That's especially important if you are doing a faster method so that nothing gets untangled there. If you want to use sequins, like here, you can almost use the same method. Just get down from under the fabric and then secure the sequin with a thread. And as you see here, the sequin needs more than one thread. It stands up from the fabric a little, so you need another stitch, at least two, to make it come down flat again. And I am pulling my thread here very securely, and I will use several stitches in a pattern that I have seen in one of Jeanne Lanvin's dresses, the Koh-i-Noor dress, and the embroideresses there used a star pattern for the sequin to get it into place, and I found this very intriguing and charming because it gives an additional little pattern and gives more the impression of fire that I want to create. If there are any loops in there, you can also untangle them with your needle. Again, I'm coming up from under the fabric, through the middle and to the sides. And I'm trying to do this in opposite directions because otherwise all the stitches will assemble in one point. It needs a little bit of practicing, but not too much. Should be relatively easy to figure it out. And this is a method that you can use to attach sequin by sequin. Finished my row of sequins, and they look like little discs. And there's also another method for beading that you can use. I am using several pearls in a row here, one after the other, not more than 5, so that you don't get out of control with the chain. And then it's important to lay them down on the fabric and fix them in the position that they eventually shall have. Not too short, not too long. They shouldn't lie around in a position where they could slide back and forth on the thread, and they shouldn't amass themselves on a tighter space than they can actually take in. They would form some little loops on the outside of the fabrics, and for a straight chain you don't want that. So this is what it looks like on my half scrap mock-up pattern, and as you can see, it's way too small already, but if I would use several small frames it would maybe damage the fabric. So my solution here is using a bigger frame, and I hope I'll get to that later. Thanks for watching. Bye!